Devon Levi, Noah Östlund, Matthew Savoie, and many more Sabre prospects that we'll talk about today with Hadi Kalakeche from Locked On NHL Prospects here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Joe DiBiase, per usual, here on the show, and I am joined again by Hadi Kalakeche from the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast. What's up, Hadi? How you doing on this Friday?
Doing good. Tiny bit under the weather. Got something started. I don't know if it's a cold, the flu, whatever's going on. It's been going around. But I'm excited to be on, talk about prospects. You know, it's my thing. I love that stuff.
I've had the exact same thing. It definitely has not come from you because we've not been in the same room together. But I've had basically the exact same thing throughout today. So we're getting through it a little bit here, but we're okay on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Lots of prospects talk coming with Hadi in the next couple of segments, including the goaltending situation, which we'll prioritize here at the start and get to, of course, some of the guys that are playing down in Rochester and also up with the Sabres. Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, the Sabres do have prospects developing at the NHL level as well. Sabres next play Saturday night in San Jose. So we will talk about that game after the fact, after they play their final game of this West Coast trip. Hopefully they can get another 2 points and stick in this playoff race. As you look at that, before we get to prospect stuff, Detroit, the Islanders, the Capitals are in the spot now. Florida, do you have an opinion on what's going to happen in that Eastern Conference playoff race?
Well, Florida's on tear. I know that because the Habs have their pick, and I follow them pretty closely to see where they're going to go. They've been on a tear recently. I just there's too much skill on that team in order for them to not sort of make a late push. Maybe get a trade deadline pickup that just puts them over the board. The Isles added Bo Horvat. Horvat is a game changer in terms of what he can do on a game-to-game basis, and just taking some weight off of Matt Barzal in terms of transition play, in terms of driving that center line is going to help them a lot. So I think that I have a hunch that Florida and the Isles are going to push themselves into that playoff race. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sabres just miss out, 17th, 18th place, something like that. That's kind of what I see happening. But, down the stretch, it's going to get tighter and tighter. I don't think we're really going to know what's going to happen, how the last standings are going to look like until maybe, 2-3 games from the 82nd game of the season.
That's right where I'm at, too. I think they're going to be in the race, but I think the Sabres will just miss. I think Florida is too talented. The math looks good, right? They got 5 games in hand on Florida, but they'll definitely have to they'll have to win those games in hand and then stay above Florida because I think that's the most dangerous team right now. Washington, you never know. I mean, Ovechkin away right now for the death of his father, and we'll see when he returns. They're so reliant on him that the longer he's gone, Washington, man, they're just so old. I don't know if they're going to get through the whole season. But anyways, we're here to talk about youth today, not about the older guys. So let's get right into the guy that Sabre fans have been talking about the most this week, and that is goaltending prospect Devon Levi. He wins the MVP at the Beanpot. Northeastern kind of wins in an upset fashion at the Beanpot, in most particularly because of him. So Devon Levi overall, we've been talking about goalie trade ideas and whatnot, and the thing that we always get back to when we think of, should they go chase Thatcher Demko, or today there's Nashville Predators trade rumor. Should we even think about UC Saros as an idea? And the guy you always come back to is Devon Levi. One, is he going to be a starting goalie in the NHL? And two, how long is reasonable to wait to find out if he's going to be one?
Yeah, so for me, Devon Levi is the type of player who is going to step into an NHL role eventually. I think that he's going to get an opportunity to show that he has starter potential. I think he definitely does. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of UC Saros. It's not just the smallness. They're two sort of smaller goaltenders, but it's the style that they play, the way that they've adapted to their lack of size. I wrote an article on that for Dobber Prospects a while ago where, saying basically don't sleep on lack of size. There's something called competitive disadvantages that actually create technical advantages for a player. So when your player, let's say you have a goaltender who's smaller, he's going to have to adapt his game in order to play in a certain way that succeeds. And if he's able to succeed at a high level, the way Devon Levi has so far in the NCAA, it's not a fluke. It's that he's built the proper adaptive skills in order to flourish in a role that taller goaltender playing the same style probably wouldn't. Devon Levi's really athletic. He's really aggressive, extremely, extremely mobile, quick feet. He's able to move left to right extremely well. He doesn't sort of overcommit. He plays a style where he's able to push laterally at all times to stop a redirection or a loose puck that pops up in the slot for a player on the other side, that kind of thing. The style that he plays is extremely projectable. When you're a small goaltender, it's pretty much the only way you can make that work. So I wouldn't sleep on Devon Levi at all. I think that he's definitely got starter potential. UC Saros is kind of a unicorn in his own style because that quality of a goaltender at that size is extremely rare. But I'd imagine Devon Levi would kind of be a beta version of that. A starting goaltender who's going to give you good games, probably 910, 915, 917 save percentage. But on a season to season basis with consistency. And that's, I think, what the Sabres need the most in goal is consistency. I think he'll definitely be able to provide that.
Yeah. And on the timeline, he's 21. He can turn pro at the end of the year. I might expect he is going to sign with the Sabres at the end of the year. That's not to say he'll play with the Sabres, maybe Rochester. We'll see. When I'm talking about these trade ideas, Demko is on a 3-year deal. Saros is on a 2-year deal. And I know that would be an even bigger move. I mean, that's first round pick capital plus. Should the Sabres be not afraid of that type of move, but I guess should they feel like that's achievable, that they should be looking for, okay, that 2-3 bridge goaltender to Levi, or could they think, hey, maybe he shows up next year, we don't need to go make an investment at that position?
Goaltenders usually bloom late. I think that Levi's going to need some time to adapt to the pro game. There's a lot more bounces, there's a lot more redirections, a lot more sort of chaos. It's a lot less structured than the play you'll see in the NCAA. There's a lot of set plays in the NCAA. A lot of teams have their set plays and execute them to perfection, but as soon as you deviate from that, it's kind of things get kind of predictable. But the AHL is a different game. The NHL is even, higher in terms of pace. It's kind of the same chaotic energy, but with even more pace, even more speed. So that's why goaltenders usually tend to take more time to reach their ceiling. If the Sabres want to go and trade a pick for a goaltender who's going to give them decent-ish results in the next 2-3 years, someone like Jake Allen, someone's going to be, he's not going to cost too much, but he's going to give you consistent results and at least sort of hold the fort down between the pipes until Devon Levi's ready. Sure. But honestly, in the Sabres position, given, the bad luck that they've had recently, the amount of times that they've barely missed the playoffs or had a sort of breakdown at the end of a season that led them out of a playoff spot, I think I'd preach patience in their case. I mean, there's no rush. No one's, nearing the end of their prime or anything like that. It's an extremely young core. It's only going to get better from here. In 3 to 4 years, Dylan Cousins is going to be 25. Tage Thompson is going to be, 27. When Devon Levi joins this group, all these players are going to be at the peak of their prime. And I think that's the sort of smartest way to go and to keep all your picks. Because the thing is, with teams that have many picks, you're not afraid to take risks at the draft table. You're not going for those safe picks because you have only 4, for example. If you have 10, 11, 12 picks a draft year, you're able to take risks on low floor, high ceiling guys who, if they pan out, you've got a top pair defender, a top 6 forward, that kind of thing. So I think patience is the best sort of approach with the Sabres so that they can add as much capital through the draft. And when Devon Levi joins that team, all of their best players are going to be in their primes, which I think is the best scenario for Levi and for the Sabres.
Right. And it's not like he'll be on his own too, because Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has played nicely in his first full season in the NHL. And he was at one point, I know Hockey News at one point had him as like the number 1 goalie prospect in the world a few years ago. So, it's not like they're starting from zero. It's we're waiting for Levi to have any goaltender. And they drafted Topias Leinonen, I think was the first goalie picked in the last draft. So they've got other guys in the cupboard there.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in goaltender. All right, we'll take a timeout here. When we come back, get to some of the forward prospects that are not yet in the pros. So Noah Östlund, Jiri Kulich, and Matthew Savoie. Break down some of the Sabre first-round picks with Hadi Kalakeche from Locked On NHL Prospects when we come back here on the show. We are presented and brought to you here on the Locked On Sabres podcast by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and the calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We made it through the holidays. My goal is to eat a little healthier this year. And if you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, you've got to try Built Bar. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. What makes Built Bar so good? For starters, they're 100% covered in real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors. Churro, peanut butter brownie are the two most popular. My favorite is the cookie dough bar. They have the actual pieces of cookie dough right in there underneath the chocolate. And I don't know how Built does it because they maintain being healthy as well. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and you get a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around for a box. For years, I've been telling you about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, but now just head over to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. You get a 4-bar box of cookies and cream or double chocolate at Walmart, or head into Sam's Club. You can grab a 13-bar box of hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later with Built Bar. Again, head to Walmart, Sam's Club, or to Built.com. Joe DiBiase, Hadi Kalakeche, back here on the Locked On NHL or Locked On Sabres podcast. Hadi from Locked On NHL Prospects. Also covers the Montreal Canadiens pretty closely. And are you feeling left out at all in this playoff race, or are you focused on the Bedard sweepstakes?
You can forget about the playoffs for the Habs. I mean, half the team's injured. Cole Caulfield's gone for the season. So that's already, 30 goals off the table. It's just, it's
all about Bedard. It's all about Bedard,
absolutely.
Right?
We're tanking.
Yeah. Well, another person here that's rooting against the Florida Panthers, like we all are.
Yep.
They have the first round pick. All right. How about some of the Sabres first round picks from the 2022 draft? They drafted 3 centers, Matthew Savoie, Noah Östlund, and Jiri Kulich in that order. And when we talked last week, I don't know. I looked around after. I don't know that anybody else sounds as high Noah Östlund as you do. Now, that's not to say anybody is down on him. Just whenever we hear hype about that draft class, it's, Savoie in the top 10, just being a top 10 pick really in general, and then what he's done in the WHL. Or it's Kulich, at the World Juniors, or how easily he seemed to adapt to the AHL level at this young age. Östlund maybe flies under the radar a little bit, but why are you high on Noah Östlund and feel like he has a good chance of becoming an NHL player?
Among those 3, Noah Östlund is by far the most cerebral player. He understands the play extremely well. He adapts to plays. He's able to change his mind on the fly. He's not set on one play, and if that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. It's constantly being in an adaptive mindset, and also an adaptive body position. He puts the puck in his hip pocket. He's able to pass, shoot, stick handle, depending on what happens. And it's not predictable. It's never predictable. It's always, I have a second idea in my sleeve, and if that first idea doesn't work, then I've got this. He's able to play between checks extremely well. I love the way that he finds space off the puck, and even on the puck, the way he's so slippery and slithery. He's able to move through players really well. His shot is nowhere near Jiri Kulich's or Matt Savoie's, but his playmaking is just it's on another level. There were teams that had him in their top 10. There were teams that, I know for sure, the Montreal Canadiens, if they had kept that pick, the 13th overall pick that they traded for Kirby Dach, they were going for Noah Östlund. Like they were very high on him. And I understand it. Among those 3, he slowly but surely became my favorite. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is kind of he's kind of a one-trick pony, and if his goal scoring doesn't translate, I don't know what else he has. I don't think he has a B game at all. Östlund has a wide range of possibilities. I think the worst case scenario in Östlund's case, you get a really good third line center who's going to be making plays and creating for his teammates. But if you kind of look at what Djurgårdens is doing this year in the Allsvenskan, they got relegated to the second division. All 3 of Noah Östlund, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, and Liam Ögren are playing for them this year. Östlund has 24 points in 32 games. Ergren has 17 points in 30 games, and like Aramaki has 9 points in 29 games. So, that line is being purely driven by Noah Östlund and his creativity. Those are kind of all factors that make me think that Östlund among those three has the highest ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's kind of biased against Noah Östlund. If I'm honest, I'm not the biggest fan of his game. I think he's very limited in terms of, he's really, really good on the power play, and that's a skill on its own. We see it with players like Kent Johnson. Sometimes being a good half wall guy on the power play is a skill in and of itself that can get you to the NHL. But as soon as there's situations where he's pressured, as soon as there's situations where there's one or two guys on his back, pressuring him, he not only panics, but he's really easy to push off the puck. And that leads to situations where, there are more loose puck scenarios on the ice when he's there. Whereas Östlund is always in control. He's able to move through checks. He cuts off opponents' hands. I feel like he's much more projectable than Matt Savoie. And I had him pretty high in his draft year, Matt Savoie, but right after I put out my final rankings, I went back and watched a couple games because I was talking to some scouts and they're like, I don't know. And I started seeing it. He's really, really good on the power play. In scenarios where he's not pressured, he's extremely dominant.
Yeah.
But in the NHL, those scenarios are very few and far between. Whereas Östlund actually excels in situations where he's pressured. So that's kind of the difference for me. And Kulich is very close to Noah Östlund. I think those two are very kind of similar in terms of, Kulich is a better shooter. He's a better defensive player, but in terms of their edge work, their skating, their transition play, all that, they're pretty similar in terms of what they can give in terms of output. I just feel like Kulich is a lot more sort of straight line, run and gun. You know what you're going to get from him. It's a very pro game. But Östlund is a bit more sort of intricate. He's a bit more composed. There's some elements that he has that Kulich doesn't, but those two for me are kind of neck and neck at the top end of that prospect tier for the Sabres.
Yeah. So this might honestly just be another way of asking you like how you would rank them, but the Sabres are in the Jacob Chychrun sweepstakes right now. Probably not a favorite to get him. That seems to be LA or Boston.
Yeah.
But let's say hypothetically they get close to a deal and Arizona says, we just want one of the three. We'll even let you pick. Who are you choosing? If the Sabres and you're trading one of them, who's the one you're trading?
It's Matt Savoie.
Okay.
Of the three, I think Matt Savoie has the highest bust potential. I don't think he's going to bust. He has still the likelihood of being a top six forward. But of the three, I think that Matt Savoie has a high. If I were going to say who's got the highest chance of the three to play in the bottom six, and that's the best they can do, it's Matt Savoie. I could very, very well see him become a third line scoring winger. That's kind of what I think is the highest likelihood of happening with Savoie. So I don't think that I would hesitate at all between those three. I would pull the trigger on Matt Savoie, especially if the surrounding assets that you get for Chychrun are sort of diminished by giving your 7th overall pick. I pull the trigger on that right away for sure.
Yeah, and Chychrun too. I mean, the Sabres are just kind of, it's bare in the cupboard of defensive prospects, right? Like they're top heavy, like the guys at the NHL level with Dahlin, Power, and Samuelsson. But as I've been saying, the cavalry's not really coming to fix the depth blue line, which you could fix that easily. Your 4th and 5th defenseman, you don't have to swing as big as Chychrun, but man, that guy is so talented, and I think it would be worth it to make a trade like that, especially when they have all these picks and prospects.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trading one or two is going to be fine. Real quickly on the Rochester guys, we've talked about Kulich a little bit here, but Jiri Kulich and Isaac Rosén, who was the Sabres' first-round pick in 2021. How do you see them timeline-wise? Do you feel like they could, maybe one's different than the other, but be ready to jump to the NHL next season?
Kulich, almost for sure. I think that he's shown more than well enough that he plays a pro game in an extremely translatable way. His defensive impact has been really solid in the AHL. I said it in his draft year, but he was a top 2, top 3 defensive forward in his draft year. Really, really strong along the boards. He's able to move off the boards and make plays really quickly. The puck doesn't stay, very long in his own zone. He gets it out with speed and control, which is very, very translatable, really good in terms of the results that you get out of him. He has that defensive baseline. On top of that, he's a really good goal scorer. Not just his shot on its own. He's got a great one-timer, but his ability to find soft pockets of space in the offensive zone. Um, and his tendency to drive the net and cut to the inside. Those are sort of 3-4 things about his goal scoring that are extremely translatable. So I think that you can expect Jiri Kulich to have an impact next year in the NHL. Isaac Rosen, he's still 19. I don't think his game is as projectable right away as Kulich's is, but he's got a lot of elements in his game that were extremely evident, let's say in the World Juniors, that I really liked. He's not their top performer this year in the AHL, but the way he moves off the puck, the way that he's so slippery and slithery with the puck when he's skating up the ice, his playmaking is solid. I think it's something that he can really build his career off of. Um,
Mhm.
I think the timeline's a bit longer for Rosen, but I wouldn't sleep on him at all. He's a really, really good prospect.
All right, we'll take a timeout here, and when we come back, how about some of the guys at the NHL level? Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka. We'll get to them when we come back, and maybe a little bit on the NHL draft too before we wrap up with Hadi Kalakeche in the Locked On Sabres podcast. All right, welcome back. Some more prospect talk with Hadi before we run out of time here. Locked On NHL Prospects does some other prospect work, of course, for different sites. Big Habs fan as well. So how about the guys at the NHL level for the Sabres? They've had inconsistent seasons statistically. Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, they get grouped together a lot. I'm not sure if they should be based on the caliber of their play. They do play in the same line, which is another reason why that happens. But I guess you can group them together if you want, if they're kind of similar trajectory for you. But do you feel like they're both still tracking towards these are two legitimate top 6 scorers for the foreseeable future?
Jack Quinn for sure. I've been really, really impressed with his play. He drives play extremely well. He's constantly manipulating opponents. He's constantly finding ways to bait them into one thing and going the other way. Projectable goal scoring. He's always been a really good goal scorer, but he's added some playmaking elements over the past, year and a half. The time he spent the AHL was really, really essential in that, I think. But yeah, no, he's got a full complete package of offense, in terms of goal scoring and playmaking, stick handling as well. He's also really good in transition. He's kind of been above average defensively as well. I've been really impressed with his defensive impact. So I think that his projection into the top 6 is a bit more easy than Peterka. But Peterka has been playing pro for the longest time. He understands his assignments really well. He's the type of guy who's I think is more of a middle 6 than a top 6 guy. But I really like his impact offensively as well. He's able to crash and bang, score some dirty goals, but he's also able to score from distance. His shot is nowhere near Quinn's. I think Jack Quinn's in a different stratosphere in terms of goal scoring, but their playmaking I think is pretty similar. And on top of that, I kind of see Peterka sort of improving his defensive game, whereas Quinn, I feel like he's reached what he can do. Peterka still has some elements that he can add in terms of lower body strengths, in terms of engaging his core more in battles, that kind of thing that could actually sort of bolster his defensive impact and make him a better defensive player than Quinn, even though Quinn is better right now. So yeah, I kind of see Peterka being more of a surefire middle 6 forward, whereas Jack Quinn has a third line kind of baseline, but could absolutely reach a top 6. He's a lot more projectable in a top 6 for me.
And then more open-ended, I guess, but is there, if you don't have a name ready to go on this, that's fine, but is there anyone we haven't mentioned, Sabre prospect, like outside of the first round the last couple of years that you think is worth mentioning to Sabre fans? Go ahead.
I got 2 for you.
Okay.
Victor Neuchev, playing in the KHL right now. He's been doing great. He was a mid-round pick last year. And Olivier Nadeau, who they picked up in the 2021 NHL draft. He's got 26 points in 18 games since getting traded to the Gatineau Olympique. The Olympique absolutely bolstered the roster with a bunch of guys, and he was one of the guys they added. He's been really solid. I love his goal scoring. I like his feistiness. For a guy, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. I mean, he's got a projectable frame, but he doesn't rely on that exclusively. Obviously, the QMJHL factor kind of scares people off. I think that's kind of overblown. There are some elements of the Q where you don't really learn the things that you want to learn in that league. Scoring and play driving is very different in the Q than in the pros, but it's not to an extent that I would worry too much about it. I really, really like Olivier Nadeau and what he can bring to a third line, maybe borderline second line down the road.
Yeah. I just like that the Sabres have, I mean, this was before, obviously, like there were political reasons maybe to stop doing it, but the Sabres had gone like 10 years without drafting a Russian prospect. Like they just decided we're not going to do it anymore. And they've picked like 6 in the last 2 drafts. So
Poltapov, Prokhor Poltapov and Viktor Neuchev are the 2 that I would kind of look at as the top end of the Russian prospects right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Neuchev, man, the shot is just crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then finally, before we wrap up here, Hadi, so you're paying attention to this guy as a Montreal fan. I know Canadiens fans are really wanting this guy with either their own first-round pick or maybe if Florida drops down, but they're starting to rise back up again in the playoff race. Connor Bedard is what as a generational prospect? Is he McDavid? Is he Matthews? Is he around that tier? Like, I guess to put it in comparison to context, what level of first overall pick this is? What would you say to that?
For me, it's kind of somewhere in the middle of the 2. I think that his goal scoring is very similar to Austin Matthews's. It's not just a curl and drag shot; it's the ability to find space. It's the ability to, change the angle of his shot. Whether he's on his inside edge, his outside edge, if he's on balance, off balance, it doesn't matter. He's consistently able to find ways to create offense and create his shot. On top of that, you have the transition ability, the ability to play his position defensively. It's kind of been overblown, the kind of lack of effort level. He's playing for a team in Regina that is not going to make the playoffs and wasn't interested at all, and made it clear that they weren't going to trade him. So I understand the kind of lack of motivation there, but when you saw him at the World Juniors, he was a more than capable defensive player, and he just controls play at all times. So for me, I'd say, he's not going to have the raw point production and transition impact of a Connor McDavid. But I think that he can absolutely score 40 to 50 goals in his first year, which is saying something. Absolutely. Yeah. At the World Juniors, first and foremost, he has broken records left and right. He's officially the highest draft eligible scorer, point scorer at the World Junior Championship. What was it? 23 points in 8 games. The second highest after him was Jaromir Jagr, who had 18 points in 7 games. So the bar is high, and it reached it. What he did at that tournament was basically dig a trench between him and Adam Fantilli and say, "You're not crossing this. This is my draft year. I'm first overall." Yeah.
Man, I'm looking at the odds right now too. I had this take back when McDavid was in the draft, and listen, being in Buffalo, never more invested in a lottery or a draft than anything I've ever experienced. But I do remember saying, from the league perspective, this isn't even really saying much. It'd be better for the league. It's easier to market a guy when he's in a different market, when a bigger market or an East Coast market. There's an East Coast bias, but it's fact. Like, the ratings are better for the Eastern Conference than it is for the Western Conference. And Edmonton, man, was just, from the NHL's perspective, when it comes to marketing and building a star, that's tougher to do with McDavid. So I'm looking at this list of teams, and I'm like, man, the only teams where I feel like Bedard could go, where he'd be this massive marketed star, like Montreal, I guess I wouldn't be that. I've never really hated Montreal, so that'd be fine. In the Sabres division would stink. And then I'm like, for star power, wouldn't Philly be the best place for him to go? But I can't watch him in a Flyers uniform.
Oh my god, I would not like that.
No,
Bedard
now I don't know where I want him to go. Then I guess is what I'm saying.
All I'll say is Connor Bedard under John Tortorella would be boring.
Oh my god, that would be
no
bad.
Michigans? Are you kidding me? No Michigans.
He would bench him.
Yeah,
could you imagine?
Benching Connor Bedard might be the thing that gets him fired and never hired again. I mean, it's Connor freaking Bedard. He's so good at what he does. You just let him out there, let him, flash his creativity and enjoy the game. I think that's something that he would get in Montreal under Martin St. Louis more than under any coach. I think St. Louis has been more than willing to give opportunities for young guys to flash their game and enjoy it. It's just, even though the Habs are losing every second game, the environment and the vibe in the locker room has been amazing to watch. And that's one thing that, teams that are in the bottom of the standings rarely have. And that's why I think that Connor Bedard would be a great fit for Montreal. Maybe I'm biased about that, but it is But yeah, no, I think that it would be a great fit. I don't think it happens. I don't think the Habs are going to get 2 first overall picks in a row.
Yeah.
It just sucks that they had the season that they had last year instead of this year.
Yeah.
Because I like Jiri Slafkovsky, but man, Connor Bedard.
Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with him. Excuse me, as we go to the the lottery a little bit later on. And we'll check in again maybe after the season or as the season progresses here as some more prospect stuff comes out in the next couple of months. So, Hadi, appreciate you coming on, man. And do you want to plug where everybody can check out your stuff?
Yeah, for sure. There's a one-stop shop for you on Twitter. It's HadiK_scouting. I post everything I do there. You can find me at Habs Eyes on the Prize or Dauber Prospects, writing articles, doing scouting reports, that kind of thing. I've also got my own YouTube channel where I post some videos from time to time. I'm currently working on a scouting report on Ethan Gauthier of the QMJHL. That should be out pretty soon. And when it comes to the podcast, we're taking a little break right now to restructure, but soon we'll be back. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, we're there.
All right. Appreciate Hadi jumping on here, and we look forward to having him on the show again. Sabres and Sharks next, but our next show will actually be me torching the Ottawa Senators for retiring Chris Neal's number. Listen, I'm gonna pull back from my childhood just for one show, just to bring back how much I hated Chris Neal and that Senators team that went toe to toe with the Sabres for a couple of years. So that'll be next. That'll be next. Yeah. Oh yeah. You can't be a Chris Neal guy either. So I'm not offending you by. I don't think I'm offending you by.
Not at all. Yeah.
All right. So some anti-Chris Neal content coming your way next. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you Monday here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.